like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so are you ready to dive into this Ravens-Browns game?
I am. I've been looking over all the stuff you sent me, and wow, this was a statement game from the Ravens.
You got that right. This is not just a win. It was a total domination, 35-10 final score.
Yeah, I mean, even going in, the Ravens were 20-point favorites.
Exactly, and they still managed to exceed expectations.
And this win did a lot more than just boost their confidence. It actually clinched the AFC North title for them and secured the number 3 seed in the playoffs.
Meanwhile, the Browns, well, they're already thinking about next year's draft.
It's a tough reality for the Browns, but it is what it is.
So we know the Ravens were supposed to win, but what really jumped out at me was how their defense just shut down the Browns completely.
Oh, absolutely. Their defense was like a brick wall, especially rookie Nate Wiggins. He got his first ever interception.
And he ran it back for a touchdown.
Yep, a pick six. It really set the tone for the entire game.
And it wasn't just Wiggins. The entire Ravens defense was relentless, especially on those 3rd and 4th downs.
That's right. They just kept shutting down the Browns every time they tried to get something going.
So on the offensive side, though, the Ravens started a little slow.
Yeah, that first half had some folks wondering if they were maybe taking it easy.
So Lamar Jackson ended up with decent stats, 217 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 63 rushing yards.
Yeah, it was a tale of two halves for him. He really came alive in the second.
And Derrick Henry, same story. He was practically invisible in that first half.
8 rushing yards total.
But then, boom, he explodes in the second half with 130 yards and 2 touchdowns.
It was like a completely different team took the field after halftime.
Now let's talk about the Browns. I mean, they just couldn't get anything going.
Bailey Zappi had a really rough night.
Yeah.
170 passing yards, 1 touchdown, but he also threw 2 interceptions.
And their running game was basically non-existent.
Yeah, they averaged a measly 3.4 yards per attempt.
It felt like every time they got a little momentum, the Ravens defense would just snuff it out.
The turning point for me was that opening drive of the third quarter. Ravens marched right down the field 70 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah, and Jackson was showing off those MVP skills we've all come to expect from him.
That pass to Mark Andrews for 30 yards was a thing of beauty.
And then that touchdown pass to a wide-open Rashad Bateman, it was over after that.
Yeah, the Browns never really recovered.
Speaking of Jackson, he actually made NFL history in this game.
That's right. That touchdown pass to Mark Andrews pushed him over 4,000 passing yards for the season.
It's mind-blowing. He's the first player ever to have over 4,000 passing yards. A&D, over 800 rushing yards in a single season.
The first ever.
It's incredible. And he's also the first player with 40 passing touchdowns and 800 rushing yards in a season.
The guy is a one-man highlight reel.
It's like he's redefining what it means to be a quarterback.
And to top it all off, he's also the first reigning MVP to throw 40 touchdowns the following season.
I mean, the stats speak for themselves. He's definitely in MVP conversation.
Without a doubt, he's making a strong case for himself.
So the Ravens, they're heading home to host a playoff game next week. Should be exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one.
But the Browns, well, they're facing a very different reality.
They're hoping for a high draft pick. That's their focus now.
They're guaranteed a top 3 pick already, but wins by the Patriots and the Titans could bump them up to number 1.
That could be huge for them.
It's definitely a chance to rebuild and address some key weaknesses.
They got to figure out how to stop these high-powered offenses like the Ravens.
And they need to establish a more consistent offensive game plan.
A lot to work on, but hey, it's a new year. New possibilities.
So we've got one team riding high into the playoffs and another facing a long offseason of tough decisions.
That's the NFL for you, always a mix of triumph and heartbreak.
And it reminds us that even in a disappointing season, there's always hope for a fresh start.
Always next year, right?
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to shift gears for a moment.
Okay, I'm listening.
I want to talk about the human element of this game. Something that often gets overlooked in all the analysis.
Yeah, the emotions, the stories behind the stats.
I mean, imagine being a Ravens fan in that stadium when they clinched the division title.
Oh man, electric atmosphere.
This must have been an incredible feeling.
Definitely a moment they'll never forget.
And even for the Browns fans, as disappointed as they must be, there's a sense of camaraderie in sharing that experience together.
Absolutely. You stick with your team through thick and thin.
It's a reminder that sports are more than just wins and losses.
It's about the passion, the shared experience, the loyalty.
You hit the nail on the head. And that brings me to a question for you, our listener.
I like where this is going.
What stood out to you most about this game? Was it a specific play, a strategic decision, or maybe just a glimpse of emotion on a player's face?
We want to hear your thoughts.
Because at the end of the day, sports are about more than just statistics and analysis.
They're about the stories, the moments, the human connections that resonate with each of us.
So as we move on to part 2 of this deep dive, keep those personal reflections in mind.
We'll be delving further into the implications of this game.
But it's important to remember that behind all the strategy and analysis, there are real people, real emotions, and real stories.
That's what makes it all so compelling.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more on this AFC North showdown.
You know, it's amazing how one game can tell you so much about a team, where they stand, what they need to work on.
Yeah, for the Browns, this was a wake-up call.
Big time. This game really exposed some weaknesses for them.
Like what specifically?
Well, for starters, their offense, they just couldn't get any rhythm going.
And their defense, well, they had no answer for Lamar Jackson in that Ravens running game.
It all starts up front. Their offensive line really struggled to protect Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, and without that protection, he couldn't make any plays.
Exactly. And then without a consistent run game, it puts even more pressure on the quarterback.
It was like a domino effect. One breakdown led to another.
That's a great way to put it. You can't win games like that.
But hey, even in a loss like this, you got to find some positives, right?
Of course.
I mean, they've got that high draft pick, and there's a lot of young talent on that roster.
Absolutely. There's still plenty to be optimistic about.
So what do they need to focus on in the offseason?
Well, the offensive line needs a major overhaul. They've got to protect Zappi better if they want him to develop.
Makes sense. What about the defense?
They need to find a way to generate more pressure on the quarterback. They couldn't touch Lamar Jackson.
And he made them pay for it?
Big time. So, yeah, even with a high draft pick, they've got a lot of work to do.
It's not going to be an easy fix.
Nope. It's about building a solid foundation, developing their young players, and making smart decisions in free agency.
Okay, let's talk about that high draft pick for a second. What can they realistically expect to get with that?
Well, a top pick could land them a franchise cornerstone.
Like a quarterback?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Or a dominant offensive lineman, or a shutdown defender. It all depends on their scouting and their draft strategy.
You mentioned quarterback even though they have Zappi. Are they not sold on him as their long-term answer?
It's definitely something to think about. This draft class is supposed to be loaded with talented quarterbacks.
So if they see someone they really like, they might just go for it.
It's a gamble, but it could pay off big time.
And the Browns, they need a big win right now.
They need to make a splash, generate some excitement for the fan base.
Speaking of fans, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about how this game impacted both fan bases.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster of emotions for sure.
For the Ravens fans, this was pure joy.
Seeing your team clinch the division title like that at home, it's got to be an amazing feeling.
A moment they'll never forget.
And for the Browns fans, I mean, as tough as this loss was, they still showed up. They still supported their team.
That's loyalty right there.
It speaks volumes about their dedication to the team.
It's a good reminder that sports are more than just wins and losses.
It's about the shared experience, the emotional connection, the loyalty.
You nailed it. It's about being a part of something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
You know, one thing that struck me was the contrast in emotions on the sidelines.
Oh, yeah. You could see the confidence oozing from the Ravens.
And the Browns, they just looked defeated.
It was like the Ravens knew they were going to win, and the Browns, they were carrying the weight of past disappointments.
Body language says it all sometimes.
You can tell a lot about a team's mindset just by observing them.
So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I have a question for our listeners.
Hit us with it.
What do you think is the biggest takeaway from this game? Was it Lamar Jackson's historic performance? Was it the Browns' struggles, or something else entirely?
We want to hear from you.
Because at the end of the day, sports are about interpretation.
It's about seeing the game through your own lens.
So take a moment to reflect on what resonated with you the most.
What will you remember about this Ravens-Browns matchup?
We'll be back in a moment to wrap things up and explore some of the broader implications of this game.
Should be interesting.
Welcome back to the show. We've been talking about this Ravens-Browns game, and, it was a big win for the Ravens, obviously. But this game had implications for the entire AFC.
No doubt about it. Every game matters, especially this late in the season.
And I think the Ravens, they sent a message with this win.
Oh, yeah. What message was that?
We're coming for that championship.
I think everyone heard that message loud and clear. The Ravens, they're playing with so much confidence right now.
I mean, Lamar Jackson is breaking records. The defense is shutting everyone down. And they just seem to have this unstoppable momentum.
They're on a roll. That's for sure. It's got to be intimidating for the other teams.
Yeah, because they're playing a different game.
They're dictating the pace. They're controlling everything.
So the question is, Can anyone stop them?
That's what everyone wants to know.
Okay.
The AFC is loaded with talent this year.
You got the Chiefs with Mahomes, the Bills with Allen, the Bengals with Burrow.
It's going to be a wild ride in the playoffs.
I can't wait to see how it all plays out, but I want to bring it back to our listener for a moment.
Yeah, what do you got?
What do you think is the key to the Ravens' success in the playoffs? Is it Lamar? Is it the defense, or is it something else entirely?
Could be their coaching, their chemistry, or maybe just that intangible it factor.
That's a great question. Something to think about. And you know that's what we love about this show.
What's that?
We encourage you to think for yourself, to go beyond the headlines.
We don't want to tell you what to think.
We want you to form your own opinions.
We just want to give you the tools you need to analyze the game.
And that's what makes sports so great. They spark debate. They fuel passions.
It's about more than just the final score.
It's about the human stories, the strategic battles, the unpredictable drama.
And sometimes it's about those moments of pure athletic brilliance.
Like that Lamar Jackson touchdown pass, the one that sealed the victory and made history.
Oh yeah, that was special.
A perfect example of skill, vision, and execution.
The kind of play that gives you chills.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Go for it.
This Ravens-Browns game, it was a microcosm of the NFL itself.
How so?
It was a showcase of talent, strategy, and determination, but it was also a reminder that success is never guaranteed.
Even when you're on top, there's always another challenge waiting around the corner.
That's what makes it so exciting, the constant ebb and flow, the pursuit of excellence that never ends.
You said it. And that's what keeps us coming back for more.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.
And never underestimate the power of a deep dive to uncover the hidden layers and untold stories that make sports so compelling.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.